any of us is a product, an inextricable mix of our genes and our environment. So contrary to what a lot of folks say, the detractors of evolutionary psychology, who argue that the evolutionary psychologists don't think that the environment matters, nothing could be further from the truth. But so you and I are as I said, an inextricable melange of our genes and environment. So to answer your question, I'll first address the genes part, then the environment part. The environment part being that you grew up in Russia and Venezuela and Lebanon. The genes part is that the unique combination of genes that constitute the personhood that is Gad Saad is such, for better or worse, that I cannot tolerate bullshit. I am physically ill by hypocrisy, by intellectual dishonesty, by intellectual arrogance that masquerade. I mean, this is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? I think that I know so much, but in reality, I'm only overconfident in my stupidity. So all of these things are really personally injurious to me, so that when I go to bed at night, if I feel that I haven't done all that I could in whatever small or whatever big way that I can to contribute to eradicate the stupidity, then I feel that I have failed in my own personal conduct. So that's the individual element of why I do what I do, to answer your question. But I exactly agree with you that we are also a product of our unique life trajectories. And so having grown up in love, actually, chapter 1 of my forthcoming book is exactly answering your question, which is when you grow up in Lebanon, where you see what blind tribalism does, what you see what identity politics does. But here, identity politics is that when I stop you at a militia roadblock and you are of the wrong religion, we put a bullet through your head, right? We don't just e-mob you on Twitter, right? So when you see what lack of freedom is, what blind zealotry is, where a departure from what a departure from reason is, then you come to the West, and for many years you feel as though you're now going to be in a steady state of reason, and then suddenly you have a second war that starts. The first war I faced was in Lebanon. The second war is the war against reason in our universities. Then I say, wait a second, I don't want to return to Lebanon. Now, that doesn't mean that tomorrow we will sink to Lebanon, but give it enough times, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 500 years. If we are not committed to all of the things that made the West great, that allowed us to come to the West, then we will be the next Lebanon. And so I completely agree with you. My life trajectory makes me that much more committed to fight against that nonsense.
And Gad, you say that we could end up like Lebanon. Why can't we just let people have bad ideas? Why do we have to consistently challenge them? After all, this is a free society. Some people are entitled to believe what they think, aren't they?
Oh, you can. I'm a true free speech absolutist in that I believe that the idea of shutting down people because even objectively wrong ideas. So let's take the most extreme position that supports my position. I am Jewish, having escaped Lebanon as a Jew. So few people could have my Judaism as ingrained in my identity as I am, even though I'm, by the way, an atheist, but culturally and so on, in my identity, I'm very Jewish. Yet I support the right of Holocaust deniers to appear on campus and say that the Holocaust didn't happen. So there couldn't be any more of a commitment to free speech absolutism than that example, right? There's nothing more grotesque. There's nothing more of an affront to truth than to say the Holocaust didn't happen, or it wasn't 6 million Jews, it was 6,000 Jews, right? And yet I support their right. So it's not that I don't support the right of people to have bad ideas. On the contrary, bring out your bad ideas and let me smash you as the apostle of truth into oblivion.
That was delivered like a rapper.
How is that for poetry?
So you genuinely, basically, what you believe is bad ideas should be discussed. But I guess what you're pushing back against, and probably the reason you feel so strongly about it, we now live in a society where if you are perceived to have the wrong ideas by the establishment, then you must not speak. You know, if you believe that there's male and female, you must not speak because that's transphobic or insulting to minorities.
Well, exactly. I mean, listen, I appeared, and some of your viewers may know this or not, but I appeared in front of the Canadian Senate when Bill C-16 in Canada was being discussed. Bill C-16 is the bill that incorporates gender identity and gender expression within the rubric of hate crimes. And of course, my position was not that transgender people should not be free of bigotry, right? So that's a nonsense. I mean, of course I support that, right? But what I was saying is that in the service of trying to protect people from bigotry, we don't murder the truth, right? So the fact that in the 21st century, an evolutionary psychologist has to appear in front of the Canadian Senate and say, no, really, believe me, there is such a thing as male and female. No, there is this thing that Darwin talked about called sexual selection, which is one of the main drivers of how traits, morphological features, and behaviors evolve. And he based it on the fact that, there is male and female. That shouldn't be something that I have to do in front of the Canadian Senate. But the reality is, because of the position I took there, which is literally laughably obvious, right? The average 2-year-old knows that that's true. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first markers that you use to identify yourself, if not others, is your biological sex. The fact that I did that, I already saw how universities in general, in some cases my own university, started distancing themselves from me, right? So it's great that I have this huge platform and that millions of people know me, but my God, why must the Jew be such a problematic guy?